Thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it. There are new standards. The last time they were revised was in 2011. And so these were revised in 2025 with an adoption date of July of 26. And so to do that, they compiled some research from the REL, which is the Regional Education Laboratory at Northwest. And they found 11, or in 2011, they had 8 mathematical practices that they adopted. And then later put those into Common Core language to be consistent throughout the United States in hopes of our students having the same foundational skills, especially if they're moving around. But then in 2016, there was some more research done. They used some cognitive development, instructional practices, evolving mathematical needs, rapid data, mathematics resilient society. I mean, all kinds of fabulous things to get a little bit better view on skills that students need to have and apply. And so based on that, they looked at the 5 practices that they have for the NAPACE framework and then decided that wasn't enough for Montana and for our diverse needs. And so based on that, they took the 5 recommended ones and then they added a standard 1 and a standard 7 to make sure we met IEFA standards. And then also like specific priorities that the big group came up with that they felt were reflective of Montana student needs. So that's kind of this whole part if you ever get bored and you want to read that. But based on that, they came up with these mathematical practices. And here they have it in a nice poster if you ever want this for your classroom. It's kind of nice. That is really big. The first one is problem solving and perseverance, which is important. I think all of us can agree that sometimes it's hard for our students to persevere and not give up when things are hard. And sometimes I want to just give up when something is not easy, but I have the link in there for you so you can grab it if you want. The second one is to be able to use abstract and generalize, justify and prove, model with math, represent, collaborate, and then make sure there's cultural connections. If you scroll down to the next page, it gives you a more in-depth view of what each of those talk about. And so they're kind of nice. You can just click that link and hit print. They're great. That's one of the resources that they've been working on. The state also has these fabulous opportunities for professional development. And sometimes PD opportunities are not that wonderful, but I went to the first one and it was good. The second one was amazing and I missed it. And so I actually watched the video of it and learned a lot. So if you need any renewal credits and you're interested, these are every month. They're the 3rd Thursday of the month from 4 to 5 p.m. And so that would be great. Where's this link at? This is the agenda that I emailed to everybody. It was probably a month ago and then another week or so ago, but I can send it out again when we're done. Thank you. Yep. And so on that, here's the link if you want to register for it. It just says register now. And they're pretty good. You do have to keep your camera on and be willing to chat to get the credits. And then they just send you a quick evaluation at the end that's like 2 or 3 questions. So if you need any PD, those are really good. And then for our plan for the whole year, some of you have been on these before. It's fairly similar to what we've done in the past. Today, we're only going to get into a little bit of it. This is the one I would like everybody, by the time we meet again on November 11th, to please take a couple minutes if you haven't had a chance and fill out who your textbook vendor is, the title, any supplemental materials that you use and that you feel are helpful. High school, I may have missed some of your classes. I apologize. I was trying to remember them. I did put in elements of algebra and contemporary math, but if there's other ones and you need to add them in, please do so. Just so we kind of know what there is and then whether or not it fits the new standards. And if it doesn't, then we need to kind of look for something else. So that is also, that little link is right here in our agenda under A. And so they're kind of color coded by grade level. Yeah. And then to determine kind of the difference between those, I also have a couple things that I put up here. And then after this little time, you won't have to twist around as much. But the standards are organized a little bit differently than they have been in the past. So in K-12, every part of it has a domain, which is kind of like your category, like number sense or geometry, measurement data that we've always had. And then there's the standard. And then they have new substandards, which, like if you've ever been in an IEP, they're further broken down into like little benchmark goals or sub goals that they have. So those are in all of the standards, but then they shook it up a little bit for 9-12, and they have something called Core and Core Plus. So Core is what every student would need to be able to get their math credit to graduate, and then Core Plus would be the college and career readiness track of it. So that's kind of nice that they have them in there. This, to me, helps my brain when I'm looking at it, because here's our KA coding. In front of every standard now, they have Montana, which they never used to before. So that's kind of a give me. And then whatever your grade level is. And then the next part is your domain or your category. And then what standard number it is. High school looks the same, but it has that addition right here of the core, whether it's core or core plus, depending on if it's the college and career readiness part of it. And then they also have a category there, which elementary does not have. And so it further breaks it down a little bit. So different than it was before. One thing that I know we've done in the past, I think it was Vicki Gibson who was here when we first looked at standards, probably in 2011. And we looked at the verbs to determine kind of what we need to do in that. And so that's how they have this structured a little bit too. If you can see this standard, does everybody know what standard this would be? What grade level? Third grade, and then measurement data. Standard 1. Good. So it says tell and write time on a analog and digital clock to the nearest minute and measure time intervals in minutes and solve word problems in context involving addition and subtraction of time intervals in minutes. Super wordy. Which it's less wordy than it used to be.
Yes.
So if you look at this standard, you kind of find those verbs in it, which are write, count, analyze, graph. So you know like what they need to be able to do with the standard. And then with the nouns, it involves things like linear functions, numbers to 100, different things. So what concepts they're learning, and then the context that it goes into, that kind of focuses on the further development of the skill. And I think that will help with vertical alignment. I don't know for sure if we'll get into the vertical alignment. It'll kind of just depend on how long this takes us to do. I think this part won't take an extremely long amount of time because there's quite a few people who have done it before. And that is good. The state is also planning on coming out with vertical alignment, all kinds of extensions and lessons and different things too. But that is in the works. I think they'll probably realistically have like K1, 2 definition. I would hope that maybe a little more, but I don't want us to be waiting 5 years for something that we can kind of do ourselves. And then looking a little bit further, here's the breakdown of that. The proficient students are able to do these things. And so if you're wanting to break down that standard, you know that tell time on an analog clock to the nearest minute. Those remind me of our I can statements that we always had before, which are a lot more student friendly than giving them this last standard that we just looked at, because I think they'd be lost pretty quickly looking on that. And so, the substandards make up a lot of parts of it. Okay. And then here's the standards I have in here. The next part, which this is kind of nice, it's hard to see up here, but I have it included in your packets, is the recommendations for high school, because high school isn't grade level based, it's subject based. And so they have some recommendations for tiering it towards a class instead of all of them. So if you look kind of in the middle part of there, they have the old Common Core standard, and then they have the new Montana standard code, and they have aligned those for us, so we don't have to go in and necessarily do that. But that'll make it a little easier for looking at what you already do and then what needs to be added or what can be taken away, which is kind of nice. And then I had kind of looking at the changes between old and new. Here's a second grade example. Here's our old 2011 standard. I'll let you peek at that for just a minute. And then the new one's on the right side. Anybody see some major differences between the two? It is a lot less wordy, I feel like. I feel like there's kind of a broader scope to it as well. Like it could be maybe interpreted a little bit differently. As you get into the standards too, there is more of a standardization of language. We have tried to keep the vocabulary very consistent, which I appreciate. Mm-hmm. And then one of my questions was, is that going to be aligned with the mass testing and everything else in there on that too? So that would be really helpful. They have taken out, and it's less wordy. Can anybody kind of see why it's less wordy?
Taking from putting talking types, rather than taking ways putting together, taking apart, it just says all types.
Yep. Yep. So they just took all those examples out. And
indigenous peoples instead of American Indians.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's gonna be a little bit looser, more broad for us to interpret, how does the state interpret that when they administer the tests?
Good question. That's part of why they want those subdomains in there, and they're working on getting all of those ready for everybody too. Part of me wishes we were a year later in doing this, but I also think it's probably, we don't want to get off our rotation either, because next year's an ELA year, so we don't want to do both of those at the same time ever again.
Do you feel like those subdomains are taking place of all of that extra stuff that they cut out?
Okay. Mm-hmm. I do. Yep. Kind of peeking at them. And they're consolidating some ideas. They're saying, fluently, fluidly, use addition and subtraction, that kind of stuff. So just a couple more of these. Here's a 912 example and kind of how they structured that a little bit differently. And just scoot that down just so you can see it a little better. Sorry about the lights too. Use the non-glossy screen for these lights. Any major things you see on these?
The 9 through 12 part.
Combine them. They combine them into one standard.
Which is good and bad. I mean, it's the same amount of information, but they just really compressed up for those. I did notice that they made this standard fun. I mean, maybe functional, they meant for, but I thought, well, that's kind of fun. And then kind of to look at those analyses when we do it. This one right here, I have a link for you on that. And then I've created a link for the mapping of the worksheet too. So I'll just show you where that's at when we're right here. These standard notes, those are just my notes of things I just showed you. But then when we get into it, I have this in your packet, but if you're like me, sometimes I love paper, obviously, but I like to do as many things electronically as I can. And so when we're looking at these two standards, this is also in there if you want to just go to file up here and make a copy. Then you can make your own copy for your grade level and entitle it. If you would rather do it on paper, no worries at all. I have included in your packet one of the pages that looks like this. It looks like there's a lot more room. On the Google Doc, though, the way I did it, I just set it up as text wrap, so you should be able to keep typing if you want. But that's kind of our alignment mapping tool. And so that is kind of where we are going to be. I'm going to skip some of this stuff. I did put this in there too. There's another virtual learning series if anybody wants to do fixed by standards and real life data. There's one coming up next week, and you can scan any of these QR codes in there. There's some other virtual summits that are over November, and then there's some podcasts in there too. There's just a little bit of extra information in the part that says my notes. Because you can never have too much information. Or something. One of the other things that I did in this section too, here's that alignment sheet that we just took a peek at, and then right below it, here's the 2011 standards, if you want those digitally, and here's the new standards. The cool thing about the new standards that I kind of like is they show up really small. But if you go to the table of contents, this will be updated as they put information in. But if I'm in high school and I just want to know what the content standards are, I can go here and click on the link and they're all hyperlinked. And so you don't have to scroll, which is kind of nice. That part too. So those are there. This one that says link click. This is the correlation guide, and I have included that in yours too. And so it shows you the difference between the old standards and the new standards. And so that is right there as well. And then if you can never ever sleep and at night you want something else, this is the revision document that shows all the Montana code and everything. I think it's like 394 pages long. So if you would like to read the code about the changes, this is there for you. In case you want. And then there's also a summary document that's kind of nice too, but we're not going to go into those today. What I would like to hopefully get through today is to give you a little bit of time to work just with your grade level teams on grabbing this information. In these packets, did everybody get one? Yep. Okay. So I'm going to steal Corey's for just a second, if that's okay. She's doing good. She's already writing on it. So that's awesome. We've got the old standards first, and then your new standards are right next to it. So I don't know how your brain best works. Whatever works best for you is how I recommend this. But I am a person who likes to put them right next to each other and kind of compare them. I do have a box of highlighters over there if you want to highlight and find the changes. And then here's also the correlation sheet that'll tell you which ones change. So, you know, if I look at first grade, I see that Standard Montana 1 08.6 used to be Common Core Standard 6 and 6. So they have combined those two from before into 6 and 7 now. And so there's more. And so you can quickly look at that and say, okay, we've got that. And then I'm going to go ahead and with my partner or my friend or somebody, go ahead and say, is the alignment strong or not? Or just highlight the differences. So then when you go to teach, then you know, hey, I need to include this, or you can cross out things that you don't need anymore. Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody need anything else? I'll bring highlighters around. My goal is ours to be under an hour. So we need to set a timer, we can also do that. Yeah. My goal is. Yeah, remember that.
Was that?
Yes.
I don't.
There is.
It's really just shooting.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's all I got on your screen.
Right now, I'm not more.
Grab it.
Okay, sure.
It's just.
Yeah.
No. This is.
Anybody else have anything? The hair, what color? You guys see? So it doesn't mean running learn to know what's not there. We're gonna ground up to do what we've been doing. But then the
And for sure.
Yeah, that's right. And then right here on page 1. And then they have this small image that's first the line out career. Yeah. But I don't even know if those boards are I'd be interested to see. Because it's very. I know. It's sometimes. You know, then you come down from here. It makes it the same. That's just what I was trying to do. So. It's not, okay, so it's right for sharing free to go up. We need to find out what your grades and go to. I mean, it's that is,
So they change this instead of fluently. Same
So it's my first strategies, right? Maybe we do all the way across our
Well, that's why it says animals, but they also have to recognize those things because they want to get it. So I usually touch on them.
But I don't care.
They were just highlighting on the news now, so I feel like this person.
I'll be on
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
By using visual correction models, yeah, so you can figure out the problems. By using visual correction models to recognize the problem. The different things are also like preparation estimate of the numerator cell and solve word problems involving editing and Unless they're results in a.
That one is for sure.
And then they.
They turned out that line, even if I was what I was really happy.
You're then
She's been.
Don't worry about this.
Well,
And then the next line is about the.
You wanna highlight what's different?
Probably have a truck that you were to get away with. Size standard.
That's so weird though. I mean, there's probably.
I know, I can see
And then we go get that.
Cultural and then I have a role that one. They got their. Use a particular. All access and the second number indicate how far to travel and they change where it says naming it in actually the real name and then indicate how far to travel. Market value. Also belongs to also that's what nothing changes. That's for and all this stuff. I'm gonna say. They are. More than four.
Now there's a class. So they should examples of it.
So that just went from 25.
So we are black.
Number line, yeah.
Okay, so then. But I think it's fine, that means like, I got me.
So we're.
To me, I think.
When we're looking at it, last time I was.
You.
Cheers.
Right. You want us to do
Terminating leaves. I would do it like And that's what I would do. That's what they do all the time. All right. How many? hate this.
Oh, yeah. I was like,
Exactly.
Yeah, please do. Honestly.
And then they didn't feel to do that.
Yeah, you're similar.
That's when we, and then it means that. So just that people it's not presentation of their mind, right?
She was like,
So, we'll both say.
yeah, but I know that that's.
Technically, it's the same. Technically, it's a good job. I think
Yeah.
even if, you know, I say, you guys want to raise that. No, our, the next option. You guys are ready to be. So then other research for it, maybe it's where I'm reading. You know, get that. Big
All of that out. Okay, so we're okay.
It's like,
We need a couple
vocabulary. Hopefully that will
Yeah. We got a question mark there, so we'll be like, what do you? Our book is not so, actual scale out. If you remember.
Trying to figure out.
I don't know how they do you were there.
Or.
Not like that, was like. Well, 4 years. I don't know, like, it's like 14. Remember that time because we only do it.
Sometimes. I don't wonder if
So the technology. They're assuming we have like, a wrapping.
If you don't have that, it's different. But again, actually, what we're doing
Fine, so we don't have that. Yeah, it's an elevated, dilation of the app, which is dilation. I mean, what does that mean? Yeah, pressure. Okay. And how that is. We're good.
And then, oh, yeah, like, right up here, and serious. So they don't have I saw the stuff that you put on there. I'm looking at the sandwich. So I probably nothing I really know. I can't find that. You know, that's what it is. I don't know.
So 4 is now like that. Got it.
I mean, I need to do that. That is how it's fun. Like, I stand to what the I see that. They call it, you know, when you're
So why is it not like yours? Yeah. Oh, I'm not ready. But It's not enough. Did you see that? And we don't allow, we don't give people
I'm gonna give out 2 minutes to wrap up, and then we're gonna take next steps if that works.
I'm just saying. That's it. This one, that's really nervous. So I'm like, you're here. I got you. It's down. You're really watching. I don't want to make them break. You like That's the six. Very good. I know it's over. Well, I do.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop you really quickly. Was this helpful to look at the differences between the standards?
Yes.
How many people need more time to do that?
We only got partially.
Do you think on a support Friday you would have time to work on it? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. That work with your advisory or no? To work on it during a support Friday at all, would that work or no, or with advisory? Does that make it tricky? Depending on how many kids show up?
Yeah, I typically have like the most kids in the building in my room during advisory time on support Fridays.
No, that's why I'm asking.
Cause I'm that person that always looks to see if I'm just the only one who has a bunch of kids. So, that department usually has the most kids on support Friday.
I can see that.
Okay.
K5, do you feel like you're in a pretty good spot? Everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. So by the next time we meet, K5s can probably be done. The next one then? Do you want K5 maybe? You said K5 can probably be done. Oh, here's one. First standard. So I guess this is my question. For next time, should we plan on looking at vertical alignment in teams, or should we look at your old curriculum templates and make those adjustments based on kind of the standards? So let's do that in case people need more time in between. So next time we'll do the curriculum templates. I will email those out for you, so you'll have them electronically, and we can work on them here. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you need before next time? If they had a question, I'll get the answer to that.
Right.
Thank you very, very, very much.